One must understand the reason why one is cultivating oneself and learning the Buddha Dharma. Therefore, one should understand and practice the following. The Buddhas and the correct Dharma are the most exalted of all. I will take refuge in them until I reach enlightenment. All of the merit for my cultivation is for the benefit of living beings, and it is for their benefit that I vow to become a Buddha. All conditional phenomena are like a dream, an illusion, a bubble, a shadow, morning dew, or a flash of lightning. All sentient beings will definitely die. All inanimate things will definitely perish. This principle also applies to my body, which is composed of the four great elements. I will be separated from my family and friends one day. Time is pushing my age forward. Early youth is followed by the robust years of life, which is followed by old age, which is followed by death. Sounds or flowing water never return after they are gone. The thoughts and words at this very moment have already become impermanent. I will come closer and closer to death. Death has no set time to it. I could go to the next world at any moment simply because my breathing stops. I can take no worldly possessions whatsoever with me to the next world. These principles apply to my very own body. When one's contemplation becomes real, then one will give rise to fear. At this time, one has entered the beginning stage of giving rise to a mind intent upon leaving the cycle of reincarnation. The practice of the 4 yoga groups is like this. All Dharma methods are like this. I vow to cut off all evil within me. There will be no evil that I will not cut off. I vow to practice all types of goodness. There will be no type of goodness that I will not practice. I vow to save all living beings. There will be no living being that I will not save. There's a classic Zone koan, a teaching story. It goes like this. You who sit on top of a 100-foot pole, although you have entered the way, it's not genuine. Take a step from the top of the pole, and the entire universe is in your eye. You who sit on the top of a 100-foot pole, although you have entered the way, it is not genuine. Take a step from the top of the pole, and the entire universe is in your eye. You ever feel like that? You ever feel like you're being perched on top of a pole? No, poles aren't that big. 100 feet up? Just thinking about it makes my palms sweat. And I've been there. I've been on top of a pole not figuratively, but really. I would take kids on adventure-based programming, and one of the activities was you were belayed in and go up, and then you stand on top, and you're belayed in. You have to trust that the person down below is going to catch you, because the job is to step off 100 feet up. And because I was leading the group, I had to go first. Now, I've done a lot of stuff, but that was not one of them that I did. And I did it. And down below wasn't one of the leaders, it was one of the kids. There's no shortage of uncertainty. When we pay attention, no shortage of feeling perched between knowing and not knowing. No difference between confidence and humility. The point of this Zen teaching is to transform fear to fearlessness, and to help us look at what that fearlessness is. It is to help us know the difference between knowing and not knowing. It's to wake up to the reality of our lives. It aims towards revealing real freedom and a more genuine way of living, knowing that everything is uncertain, everything, and precarious. And these words suggest letting go of old mental models and seeing yourself and the world through fresh eyes. How can you transform fear into freedom and possibility? Have you considered that? Fear into freedom and possibility. I mean, truly, that's what we've been studying for the last few years. Freedom. Freedom. I'm not going to impart the whys, the steps, the hows, the strategies. Today, I'm not going to bring your attention to the suttas or the plethora of books out in the market. What I am going to do is tell you a story, a true story. The person formerly known as Jean Berg. It's me. It's not a story of the life timeline, but rather of going in and out of the eye of the storm. I normally wouldn't do this. Kind of felt like selfing. And yet, I had an opportunity to be with our teacher on Friday. I usually set up these one-on-ones, but realized it had been over a year since I truly sat with her. And it was time. And after I was done, she suggested that I should offer this to the Sangha today. So here I am. Top of a 10-foot pole. Dis-ease, disquieted, disturbed, discontented, restless, and unsettled. Also, trust, faith, and hope. That particular being at that top of that pole with those descriptors could be anywhere in this last years of my life. but they've been in the last several months. Did you notice? Some of you have. Some of you have. I've been working really hard. I've been working really hard. And over time, it was building discontent. What's to be discontented about? You're a monk and live in a wonderful monastery with great Dharma friends and Dharma friends outside of the monastery. What's to be discontented about? You've lived a good life. Venerable last week talked about not needing to look at the legacy, and it was like, yeah, 40 years in work, and I don't need to look at that anymore. It's history. It served me well. It continues to serve me well, but not necessary to visit anymore. Even with years of study, of practice, of the right language, of the right knowledge, paying attention, of noticing, of asking, what is this? I was caught. We go through the litany of external causes and conditions. Reasons, influencers. They're influencers. I was noticing my agitation inside. I've come over the years to really recognize it's an inside job. And the first alert system, as I've shared with you many times, is inside. Because we don't pay attention, we wait until it becomes words and actions that most often aren't very skillful. I remain looking outside. Even after all those years of training, even after all the trust and the hope, the faith, I was looking outside. When I was working in the schools, every 5 years I moved to a new job, a new school, new staff. It was great because I learned new things and I grew and developed. I had new challenges. I thought it was really a smart thing to do. I still do. I worked with people that were in the same job, doing the same, teaching the same classes for 30 years. Good for them, maybe. Not so good for me. I've been a pilgrim. I've gone many places, discovered many things, traveled far and wide, made my way around Mount Kailash in Tibet. I've worked enough in those realms that I had to have 2 knees and a hip replaced because I wore them out. And still, what's this? What is this? What is this? Still looking out. Still looking out. Standing on top of the 100-foot pole. I spent several months preparing for the retreat that some of you were at on aging, illness, and death. And I didn't want to just bring words to you that were there. I wanted to bring my own understanding. I wanted to get to the essence of what this really meant. And I was joyful to see that we didn't just have a bunch of 60-year-olds sitting there and older. That we had 30-year-olds, because that's the time to really grab hold of this. I dipped my toe into the material and I wore it. I felt it. I experienced it. I wondered about it. I looked under stones. What is this? What is this? I deeply connected to the material. And that very piece, I said, I want to bring this essence, this aliveness to the people, the 25 people sitting there. I wanted them to get it. No time to lose. No time to lose. What is this? Aging, illness, and death. I experienced it deeply, all of it. Standing on top of a 100-foot pole, it was May, and it was time to prepare for my month-long journey with my Sangha monastics to California. But before I did, I spent 3 days before I got on the plane. Everybody was pretty much gone, and so I took everything out of my room. My room is in the back of the monastery. Everything out. I've been waiting and wanting to do this. And with the keen alertness of Reba, we cleaned, or she cleaned. Let me at it, she said. And then, now we're talking only 3 days before getting on the plane. And then she partnered with me as we looked at the room, and these are not big rooms. I said, what, now what? Yeah. Well, recycled. Some things got taken to Goodwill. Some things got shredded. I mean, when you're working with a Venerable Paniwadi, there's stacks of stuff that got to be dealt with, and my own. And we looked, and we considered, and we imagined, and then the room came together. It looked very different. Still a small room, still had a bed and a desk and files, and some things just went in the files and shut the door. Yet to be determined. How could such a small room look so differently? It did. It felt good. I sat in my chair and looked out the window. I thought, this is nice. This is right. And still, I was in a state. I was still in a state. Got on the plane after a few delays, got to California, got to the temple, spent a day preparing my little kuti that I would spend the next 7 days in for a solo solitary retreat. I was so looking forward to been wanting to do this for such a long time. What an incredible opportunity with Kadara and Ayasada being the Tenzo. All I had to do was go in that room, and Busita was in her place, and Venerable was in her place. 7 days. The first morning I woke up, and in a long list of from 5 o'clock till 10 o'clock, thing after thing after thing after thing. And Master Zazi said, well, make it work, but just get your practices in. Okay. I've been in retreats before. This is very different. This is very different. The first day I slept and slept. And now we're not talking naps, talking sleeping. I'd wake up, I'd be frustrated and upset. This is my first day of retreat, and look at what I'm doing. I'm sleeping. I'm so tired. Was it the travel? Was it the time change? Was it everything leading up to it? Was it this? Was it that? External, looking outwards. What is this? One of the, I would say, expectations, and I was grateful for this, was every morning to do, set an intention and choosing a word from the paramitas to live into that for the day. And that's something that's not new to me. So because I was, I'm so tired. Is it disease? Is it COVID? What's going on? The next morning I woke up, it wasn't so bad. And so my first word was patience. The second day it was patience. The third day it was patience. Now, who do I have to be patient with? There's no one. It wasn't Kadara. It wasn't Ayasada. It wasn't Busita. It wasn't Venerable. It wasn't Master. Who's left? Me. Me. Patience. And I slowly wound my way into diligence. And I slowly wound my way into firm belief. Patience was the umbrella. Nothing to disturb me but me. There were cats, little tiny cats outside. And of course, it distracted me for a moment because one little one, who's the adventurer, cat after my own heart, got himself stuck in a tree right outside my window, was meowing. I'm thinking, oh dear God, now I got to save a cat. But I just watched, and this was the first morning where I slept. And the mom, who was very diligent, and she was amazing to watch. She was looking, she came, meow. She looked up, and there he was up in the tree. And I'm watching. And pretty soon I'm thinking, do I have to get out there and climb a tree now? Do I have? And she climbs up the tree, loves him up, licks him. And then there was this wind that I didn't even see that kind of wove itself down pretty close to the ground. And so she started doing that, and he followed her until he was halfway down. And he turned around and went back up. I got this, Mom. I got this. So that was how it all began. I finished, and then I was going to add a second day because I wasted the first day sleeping. And by the 8th day, I did a day, but by the 8th day, it was 112 degrees outside. And this kuti did not have insulation. It had a cooling tank that shot, hot air out and brought cool air in some way. And it had a fan. But by afternoon, it was hot. It was really uncomfortable. I wasn't even moving. I was trying to study. Couldn't even sit. I was just letting it happen. And by evening, I went, and I had to go to, the bathroom was in the temple, which was probably from here to the parking lot, maybe not quite that far. And there in the kitchen was Venerable and Busita and Kadara. I was just wrung out. And I said, I've been in the hell realm. Not knowing that, I'm thinking it was so hot, it felt like being in hell. But not realizing what it really meant. There was a question, what was it like? How did it go? And I couldn't share anything. I wasn't ready. It was needing to just steep. And a week later, we were off to Pasadena, a very quiet drive out to Pasadena for the Dharma Assembly. So grateful to be there. Same kind of deal we had before, the time before that. Lots of people, lots of Sangha, lots of pomp and circumstance. I was really was feeling it. But like in the kuti, there was no ahas, there was no arrivals of entities, there were no lights flashing, there was none of that happened. Nothing stood out. I wasn't looking. I would have welcomed something, maybe anything, but not really. I was grateful to be there, to be with the Sangha, the choir that showed up to do their song, to be part of that offering. And the next day I was on the plane to Portland, Oregon, where I lived 40 some years. Still had a storage unit. Sold my condo, had a big storage unit. Went back to visit, put it down to a much smaller storage unit. Went back for a third visit and got a really small storage unit. So this time was it. For 45 years, I had lots of friends, good friends, longtime friends, educator friends, other kinds of friends. But this time, over the last several years, I've narrowed that group down to just a handful. And when I arrived, it was no longer 115, it was 78. Now we're talking, this is right. This is right. And I broke my time up in sections of 3 days. For the first 3 days, I was with friends. I would go to the storage unit. I took everything out by myself. No friends were there to help. I didn't ask, and no one offered. I ordered up a U-Haul van, took everything out, drove over to my friends, put everything on their porch, and started piles. Recycle piles, shredding piles. 40 years in this tiny storage, and there it was on this porch. Giveaway pile. Anybody want this pile? And by the third day, when it was time to go down to my friends, who live on a 26-acre property, I had a box of journals that I kept from beginning 1980. Stories. Most of which I'd never looked at or at least not in the last 5 years. But I schlepped them from home to home, the storage unit to storage unit. Photos. I had a wonderful photo album of my niece, my last niece that was born, of her baby pictures. Oh, wasn't that cute? She was so cute. So when I got down to my friends on 26 acres, we had a beautiful burn pile. The journals went, photos went, taken out of frames. I was planning on doing a little ritual. Felt like I should do something. But my friend Sally and I were just ripping and burning, ripping and burning. So do we need to rip all? Nope, just put them in. No weakness. Some joy. No sadness. No sadness. It was time. So we did that and had evenings and afternoons, beautiful property, walked the property. They have a horse and goats and chickens and 2 dogs and 2 cats. And we talked and we laughed. We sat out on their deck and ate, looking out over the valley. That was the second set of 3 days. And then the third set of 3 days, a friend came down, picked me up, and we went down to McKinsey River, which is a wonderful spot I've been at, a little cabin right on the river. And there I sat. Now this, I'm telling you this, was spoken to Venerable on Friday. So you're hearing the second version. And we sat. She brought her guitar, there was some music, but we just mostly sat. I sat. I get up in the morning and went out on the deck and watched the river right there. And it's true. The river flows by. In the afternoon, there were a few rafters going by. Never saw them again. That's what happens with a river. You can only step into the river the same place one time. Didn't want to come back, but I did. Rivers are my thing, so it was quite lovely. And so I returned to to Portland in the last 3 days with another friend, and it was there that I had the ashes of my last dog, Otis, that's been moved from house to house to house, and I knew it was time. And so she and I went down to Sandy River, which was a place he and I would go, and she and her dog and I and Otis would go, and I let him go. So Sandy rolls down into the Columbia River, and the Columbia River rolls out to the ocean. And so there he went. I was just standing there watching him go and wishing him well and thanking him. Of course, he was already long gone. He was already long gone. And I looked down to turn around to walk back. I was out in the water. And down there, what is this? And I reached down, and there were 2 little teeth from his ashes. So I kept them. They'll probably go away soon too. So Portland was a time of complete letting go. No sadness. No desire. A feeling of completeness. Nowhere else to go, nothing to do. I got on the plane and came back to my sweet little monastery with my dear sisterhood. And I was still in a state. I was still in a state. I had done all this stuff, and I was still in a state. Standing on top of a 100-foot pole. Disquieted, agitated, restless, still looking out there. Some of you would come up and say, "You okay?" I'm good. This is my journey, and it wasn't time to talk about it. A little bit here and there. Few suggestions, but mostly it was my journey. And my room is in the back of the monastery. And while we were gone, because we had leakage down to the downstairs room, they were going to put a roof on. I was gone a whole month. When did they come and build it? The day I arrived. Saws and hammers and 5 or 6 men speaking a language I didn't understand, and radio, music, and really? And as they built, and didn't take that much time, but it got darker and darker because I had this deck on the side of my room that I could go out through the bathroom, imagine that, to get to the deck. And it was hot in the summer, but it was glorious. But now I have a roof on, and I can't see the sky from inside my room unless I look out that one other window I have. And it felt darker. There was no real original light. I had plenty of lamps to turn on, but there was no real light, which is really important to me. And then the rains came. Day after day after day. And not just a little rain. Thunder and lightning and big rain. And the roof of that new roof was like waterfalls cascading down. I'm thinking, oh my God, it's gonna flood. And checking downstairs, it's not flooding, it's not coming through. They did a good job. I was still in a state. And the environment was taking note. I wasn't putting any of these pieces together yet. How you doing? Doing okay. I was. inside. Thunder and lightning and agitation and apprehension. He says, am I done? Am I done being a monastic? Am I done living at the monastery? It's been over 5 years. Maybe it's time to go. But I knew that wasn't it. I knew that wasn't it. What about all these things you've talked about and did Dharma talks about and did retreats on? And where's that with you? It's right here. I'm looking at it. Standing on top of a 100-foot pole. Little did I recognize I was in the midst of a slow turning like that of a very large ship that we would see on the rivers, that if they turn around, it can't turn around. It's got to go slow. And the patience of my monastics and Reba and allowing me the space, sometimes it wasn't pretty, my agitation. I would often go to my room for safety, not for me, for them. I'm not one to normally throw up all over people, but I knew that I needed, all those things, and I'm still there. I felt like a distance runner being plummeted by the worldly winds. And then, not before I left, it occurred to me, there's this very big plant in the living room of the monastery. For those that have been there, it's a big plant. We brought it over from the old property. It lived there for many years. We brought it over and it lived with us for 1.5 years. And one day we're looking at it, Santi was there. I said, that just doesn't look happy. And did it not get watered? Does it need some nutrients? And we went over and looked, and it was in this big pot. And the plant itself was in a tiny little pot. This is a big plant. It's in a tiny pot. Here's where you got to get that out of that tiny pot. I think it just needs room. So I made it the next Saturday we were doing yard work, and I made it my business to haul that out onto the porch. And I realized I could not get it out, so I asked Kadara to come and help me. She was out weeding. And so hold it up, and then held on to the pot, and pulled it out. I mean, it was stuck. Did I say stuck? Stuck. And when we got it out, the roots were just concretized. Stuck. I mean, there were just many roots everywhere. And it was in the form of that pot. Like, oh my God. Oh my God. I think I said to Jim, that's a Dharma talk right there. So Kadara, that's where I held the plant, all the limbs coming up, and she breaking it up. Just trying to talk nice to her. So sorry we did this to you. Then we put it in a big pot, lots of new soil, water. It's happy. This last week, I saw a video, and it was of a caterpillar. And the caterpillar was making its way to a place where it was starting to spin its cocoon. And so, it's time lapse, so I could watch this in just a couple of minutes. And then it was in that cocoon. And then over time, you could see starting to happen the butterfly. And over time, there was a breaking away of that cocoon. Not fast. I mean, even it was time lapse. It didn't just, ta-da, I'm here. Slowly, it came out. And then it, I had a little bit of it out, a little bit more of it out, a little bit more of it out. And then it finally came out, but didn't move. It was just hanging on the edge of that cocoon, sort of like taking it all in. Sort of like, wow, look what I've become. The cocoon couldn't hold it anymore, or it couldn't hold the cocoon. It no longer needed the safety of that cocoon, the safety that would protect it. And eventually it left, no longer needed. And just this last week, we don't have TV, but I came across video of Simone Biles in the Olympics, and I would normally watch the Olympics. It's pretty amazing what they can do. Years of practice, years of practice, years of practice for this one moment, right? If you make it that far. And there she was, and I saw two, but the one that stood out for me was her vault. And I watched it, and I watched it. I must have watched it 3 or 4 times. And there was at first, wow, how does she do that? Well, years of practice, of training, of taking care of her body, of learning and growing. But she would start at the far end of that mat, and she would run so hard and so fast. She's, whoa, I mean, I just felt it. And then she'd hit that vault, and she'd spin up, and not just flip over, but spin and twirl up in the air. Wow, that was incredible. How did she do that? Years of practice, pain, injury, new coaches, different coaches, trying things out, having it not work. I watched it again. Go up, spin and twirl, flip and flop, and then land. Oh, stuck. She did that without losing sight of where she was headed. Where was she headed? Plate tectonics. When I lived in Alaska, we were very aware of plate tectonics because you get them with earthquakes. And what happens is that the large slabs of rock that divide the Earth's crust move constantly, reshaping the Earth. And in Alaska, it either drops, that's one kind of earthquake, or it rolls. And I got to experience both. Plate tectonic. A harsh way to reshape, drop, and move. Moral of the story. I've broken out of the small pot. Although I've been working on my cocoon, I have to a great degree over the years unbound the materials, let go of them, sold them maybe. I've practiced, I've read, I was not in a crisis. I never was in a crisis. It never became a crisis. I knew that was for sure. I was releasing another layer, and not one that was outside of myself. I wasn't the snake that sheds its skin, because the snake can't grow if it keeps that skin on. It was an internal landscape issue. I was excavating. I wasn't aware of it really. I mean, I knew there was discordance. I knew there was plate tectonics. But it was not really in sight. It was my inner plate tectonics reshaping, not just once, but I've done it over the years. This one's different. These last years here at Heartwood have molded and formed me and broken me apart, and molded and formed me and broken me apart. The challenges and the joys and the sorrows. I buried my brother, my dog. I went to India and spent time with the Dalit children in particular. I felt the sorrow of what it's like to live like that. We don't know. We don't know. I didn't know, but I saw. And just when you think you got it, starts again, but this time differently. I think it's done. The worldly world is there waiting for you. The samsaric world. But we've got a backpack full of tools. Are you using them? Or are you thinking you're using them? Do you even look at them? Or is it one of those boxes in the storage unit that holds those things? Is it a checklist that you check off? So, oh, got that practice. I know that mantra, can do that mudra. I got the language, I can say all the words. Do you own it? Do you carry it with you? Are you negotiating your 100-foot pole? Or are you hanging on for dear life? Too scared. Can't go down. Can't go down. It was at this point that I could go to my teacher. Now, I've been trying to do that for the last week. And this was happening and that was happening. And of course, I would. And finally, the other day, she was leaving the monastery and I walked her out to the car, which I often do, but I was on a mission. And I said, this was a Thursday night, and I said, I got to meet with you tomorrow. It was time. I was ready. I still hadn't formulated the whole story, but I knew it was time. So I had done the work. I had replanted myself. I had turned the ship around. I had broken out of the cocoon, or at least this cocoon. I found my way in part, not losing sight of where I am. This is what I told her. And I told her this because right before I went over there, I just jotted down some notes. Because I didn't want to forget something, even though I knew I probably wouldn't. I found my way, not losing sight of where I am through the twists and turns, and not for a first or second or third time. This isn't my first rodeo. It wasn't just the years of knowledge, although knowledge is important. It wasn't just the years of practice, although practice is critical. It wasn't just the Sangha, although Sangha is part of the safety net. It was the willingness to have faith, to trust in the triple gem, and jump off of the damn pole. As I was sharing this yesterday morning, I realized I had been training for this very moment. And I will continue to train because it's not over till it's over. So this morning, as I do after I get up and I do my morning thing, my morning shtick, my quieting time to prepare for the day, I opened up just to see if the world was still there. And what opened up was this. So I copied it to bring to you and to end my time with you today. You do know what happens to a poor little suffocated caterpillar before he breaks free into a beautiful butterfly. Yeah, he is confined to a cocoon, hot, stuffy, lonely. The lights have long since gone out. I can't ask the caterpillar, but I assume it is not a pleasant experience, much like our trials on this life journey. I don't know if caterpillars have anxiety, but maybe. I mean, it seems a legit situation for the breeding ground of anxiety, that tiny little cocoon. Does a caterpillar even realize what the cocoon is producing in him? Does he know in the depth of his caterpillar heart that better days are coming? I'm not kidding you. This was right there this morning. Does he know it actually is a shelter for him while he drows? Does he know he is destined to be a beautiful, soaring, fearless butterfly? So, I guess I'm saying that perhaps that thing you thought was destroying you is actually saving you, preparing you, growing you, changing you, a metamorphosis from pain to purpose, ashes to beauty, caterpillar to butterfly. I think the very coolest part of the butterfly's metamorphosis is this. The cocoon gets left behind in the dirt, never to be used again, ever. The long, dark night finally ends. Morning has come. The cocoon is unraveled into perfection. Fly, little butterfly. It is time. May light always surround you, hope kindle and rebound you. May your hurts turn to healing, your heart embrace feeling. May wounds become wisdom, every kindness a prism. May laughter infect you, your passion resurrect you. May goodness inspire your deepest desires. Through all that you reach, may your arms never tire. May the blessings of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas always be with you. Thank you for listening.
All right,